Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the AMS podcast. I'm your host, Adrian Michael Soto, discussing all things films, past, present, and future. Welcome to episode 3. I want to say this right off the back to all those who have listened to the very first 2 episodes. Thank you. Thank you for the feedback. I'm just coming up with things on the fly. I have ideas and stuff in mind that I want to do. I've gotten suggestions of what to talk about, how to change things up a little bit, where I've gotten the suggestions of showing my face, where it could be a full on breakthrough of, depending on the length of an episode, you seeing my face and me talking about a certain topic, or just anything in general overall. And hopefully, let's see where that goes or what to discuss. And one thing I have in mind is, to those who follow me on Instagram, I I do a thing I've kind of strayed away from it from a little bit, but I would give movie quick little takes on movie reviews. I would just put the synopsis and my opinion on the film that I recently just watched. So it is basically possibly to bring myself discussing on any upcoming films or films I recently saw that you may not have seen, and I might bring AMS movie reviews into a video format here on this channel. And as far as other future things have gone, I've gotten suggestions, and one of them in particular, in about 2 weeks, there will be a American sporting event that will take place 2 weeks from now, and almost millions and millions of people will be watching on Sunday, February 12th, and gotten the suggestion of discussing sports films, not just specifically football, basketball. There's sports goes throughout a variety, and discussing the possibility of future of best and worst sports films and other topics in mind that I might bring up. And today's episode is number 3, Thriss, the trilogy. I've reached the trilogy point. Is gonna just be, I would say, this is this genre has defined the type of fanatic I am, because I grew up watching this in the 90s, Saturday morning cartoons, and just really discussing why are comic book movies so popular. And comic book movies have become a genre all in its own. As you get the action, the horror, sci fi, fantasy, it's just basically become a genre. And I'm going to discuss two main, you could say, mediums or companies in themselves. There has been other independent ones, small superhero films that aren't related to the two I'm about to bring up, but comic books have gone as a comic book, the actual medium, physical book, has have gone as far as 80 years in their history, and two in particular is DC Comics and Marvel Comics. To some, why do you think that it's such a popularity is, it makes money, they're going to make a movie about it. Just as any other genre of any kind, horror, action, almost anything. And this is a vast majority of so many comic books in that time span that these Hollywood studios are willing to give these two companies, particular DC and Marvel, the money to tell stories of each of these characters. And what I'm about to say next, maybe I'm speaking for myself, maybe I'm speaking for others. To some that end up seeing these comic book movies, you're the casual fan. You want to see because there's a particular actor or something you never heard of and you want to give a shot on. Sorry. And so basically what these movies have become, and a lot of people that don't involve themselves in this genre, they consider it as a spectacle. It's like an amusement park ride. And to that I say, they're not wrong. It's I'll go in a little bit of the specifics of the two comic book companies that I've referenced, and you go on this thrill ride, and you get introduced to one character, multiple characters, and you're just excited to see of what sort of storytelling this is and how these movie studios portray these certain characters. And with all this, you would say you would have seen the very first Superman movie starring Christopher Reeves once that came out, as opposed to seeing the Superman movie with Henry Cavill. Compare those two movies, and you could tell that Hollywood has changed, where Christopher Reeves was just being floated onto a green screen and there was wind blowing behind him, as to where when Henry Cavill became a Superman, it was probably done with CGI special effects, still with a green screen, but something completely different in a vast majority of so many things. There is so many iterations of different characters that are played by different actors. Being specific, Batman. There's so many Batmans, but it's just different storytelling done by different directors, and the list goes on and on. You have Michael Keaton, George Clooney, Ben Affleck, Robert Pattinson, Val Kilmer. You even have a man that started the television version of Batman, the legendary Adam West. So I'll go into more specifics on that. And it's kind of just like, as I've brought up in the previous episodes, of movie studios creating these IPs, or these things from books like the Lord of the Rings, for example, and it's just so many characters, and just they want to continue to do it, and if they own it, then I don't see why it's a problem to create it or in some way. And looking this up the other day, DC Comics started in 1934, and overall, I wanted to see how many characters there are. There is over 10,000 characters in the DC Comics Fathom or Encyclopedia, and that includes Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, The Flash, Joker, Aquaman. Now there's Harley Quinn. To some that are watching new stuff now, Peacemaker. The list goes on and on. And once these movies came out, DC, I would say, has done a really good job of doing animated films. Like to some that who may, as I brought up, cartoons in the 90s, the Batman animated series in the 90s with Kevin Conroy, the late great Kevin Conroy, as Batman, and Mark Hamill, also known as Luke Skywalker, playing the Joker. So they've done all different formats and everything, and Superman has been played several times. They've done reboots, they've done their own sort of series per se, even with director Christopher Nolan creating his own Batman trilogy. And then now we currently, as of this point on, there's a sequel in the works. Robert Pattinson is the new Batman, and there's going to be several movies coming out, Shazam 2 sequel, as I brought up in a previous episode, Aquaman 2, The Flash, and a comic book character from the DC Comics lore known as Blue Beetle. So, just DC is just they're gonna keep going, and as of right now, today's on today's current episode, it's almost the end of the month of January. At the time of this recording, Warner Brothers has hired former director and creator of the Guardians of the Galaxy series and so many other films as to be a part of the reshaping and rebooting of the DC Comics lore. So it looks like as you've seen previous actors, it's going to be their last films and for the end of them, and they're going to be restarting over and making more new films, and you could call it like the new era of for the DC Comics. And James Gunn was going to be announcing. I'll inform you on another day that a new slate or new films and everything is coming up. So, excuse me, let's see where that leads to. And it's just amazing how I'm gonna be. I'm not gonna. They have so many characters and so many things that I feel like they've kept it. And this is my opinion. You might disagree with what I'm about to say. They've kind of kept it the same. And don't get me wrong, the main important three are always going to be Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Those are like the top tier characters, and they've done their iterations. And I feel like when the movie studio I'm about to reference in a little bit, they wanted to go with that flow, but still do their own storytelling, and they should just do something completely separate because, as I stated before, they have over 10,000 characters, and yes, I know they're not going to say or give you every single character, but I would say at least a certain percentage has been almost the same characters for the past about half of the time span of when they started doing these movies. But I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. These comic book movies have my money. I will be the first one in line to see these movies, so let's see where James Gunn leads this to. And I would say I love this franchise or this brand just a little bit more because, once again, I grew up with the superhero comic books, Saturday morning cartoons, the 90s Spider Man, and the 90s X-Men. And for copyright reasons, to those who know the 90s X-Men with that rockin' guitar theme, and if you never heard of it, just Google it or YouTube it. It's just one of those that the nostalgia factor is just great. And I would say DC has a little bit of an advantage from Marvel, but still only by just a little bit. Marvel Comics has been around for also 80 years, and they have over 8,000 characters. And doing the research, they have created, not including not animated TV shows and regular TV shows from the past and currently now, they have done over 70 films starting since the late 80s and until today. And half of that comes from Marvel Studios itself, and the other half actually comes from Sony Pictures and Fox. And though Fox and Sony, were actually, you could say, the ones that decided to do their own stuff in the late 2000s, which I would say was a part of my childhood. The Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire, the 2000s X-Men, the introduction of Hugh Jackman, um, and just pretty much, it's just so many of those certain things that has led to those, and they've even done the ones that are not the fan favorites, like the Hulk, which was, I believe, with um, Eric Bana, Daredevil with Ben Affleck, who was also Batman, and the Fantastic Four movies. And since then, one could say that Marvel wasn't going to be able to do anything, and not until then, in 2008, when they decided to introduce. They could have introduced anything. They could have tried to done what they done in the early 2000s, but they gave a shot and introduced Iron Man as a part of their lineup. And since then, they have done 30 films and from this point on, and some of that has also included TV shows telling of all these characters from Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, now Spider-Man. You have Guardians of the Galaxy, which nobody thought would have ever worked, from a talking tree and a raccoon. Um, it just, the list goes on and on. And as the years progress, we will eventually get Marvel Studios' iteration of their X-Men and their Fantastic Four, which they're currently working on. So Marvel is just going to continue to Marvel is just going to continue to keep going and going, and I don't know. And what I'm about to get into next is current topic. Current topic that is on a lot of people's minds, which is understandable. Because let me just go into this term that some of you may not know is comic book fatigue, comic book movie fatigue. We get tired of watching the same stuff over and over, and that's fine. As I've brought up on previous episodes, um, you get tired of the same thing over and over. I've brought up, I'm a casual fan of the Fast and Furious movies. I felt they should have ended halfway through, but that's just me. They didn't listen to one person. Those movies have made a lot of money, and now they're working on the 10th film. Try to look up how much the Final Destination series have made, and spoiler alert, the premise or anything in the movies is just the same thing of people dying in kind of rated R version ways, and hence the title of the movies. And as some of us may not like how they are, movie studios say if they're making the money and they're popular, we're still going to keep going. And I would say to some that are getting tired of these certain things, you could kind of call all these franchises and movie studios like sports team organizations. And you have your favorite sports team in any form of sporting, and either your sports team was good in the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, currently now. They won championships before they sucked. Then all of a sudden they came back to relevancy, and they're making themselves known and becoming a really popular sports franchise, and winning championships. That's how you could say the comic book genre was originally been. The popularity of the DC comics, as I referenced the Batman movies, people love those. And then people now I loved when the Marvel Studios started their movies, and they recently people don't love what they did in Phase 4. I would defend the reason for that per se is 2020, not to go into specifics, but 2020 affected all of us in different ways, and it also affected movie studios in different ways. And if you were to look up stuff, it kind of they had to change and adjust to things, and it kind of pushed things away or cramped up schedules and things like that. And they just kind of it was more of putting things on a rush, and they weren't able to take their time. So you could say the way it was this for anybody that's a fan of the Marvel movies currently. They've done phases. They're up to 4 phases now. In about a few weeks, they'll start phase 5, but basically, you could call phase 4 a year for Marvel that to some they didn't see was great, and it was like a sports team. They didn't have a great season. They didn't get to go to the championship, and hopefully next year, and that's fine. Um, they're still gonna keep going because they're currently working on phase 5, 6, and 7. And as I brought up just a while ago, they will be introducing their version of a new care of their version of X-Men and the Fantastic Four. So, in the end, I would say that we're all gonna get tired of certain things in movies, and I just overall enjoy. I do enjoy the spectacle, the storytelling. Everything connects in all of these comic book movies, and it's just a connectivity, and become relatable and sharing stories that just really it stick with you and kind of are relatable. And to some of the I would call myself a casual comic book fan. I know of the history, but to some, everybody follows the actual comic book stories to all these films because that's what they reference from comic book stories of Batman from the 50s, the 80s, the 2000s. A lot of the recent Batman films have been using comic book references from comics that have been done in the early 2000s, I believe. One of them is a Batman comic called The Long Halloween, and that one in particular was recently referenced in the Batman movie with Robert Pattinson, and that storyline also with The Dark Knight directed by Christopher Nolan. So all of these movie studios are going to be referencing just so much material that they haven't done iterations on, introducing new characters. So it's basically not going to be slowing down by any means. And whether we like, as I said, in other genres, you like it or not, that's fine. You don't have to like it because you're still going to get the comic book fans. I'm raising my hand right now as I currently speak. Comic book movie fans, or the casual fans, or the first timers that want to give a shot on a certain movie. They're going to end up watching it. And basically, that's how the game rolls for Hollywood. It's a giant monopoly, you could say. And as I proceed into maybe future episodes, I could give movie reviews on particular comic book movies from the past, and I'll definitely give my movie reviews of up and coming comic book movies this year in 2023. I'll do my best to see if I end up doing a recorded version where you see my face, and let's just see where that goes. So it's gonna just be as I bring up other certain genres and talk specifically about them with something like this. it's going to be up for everyone's opinion, for interpretation. We all are going to like certain things and certain storytelling. Things are going to change. New characters are going to portray different characters. We got used, some of us like that certain Batman, that certain Superman. Now, Spider-Man's, there's several Spider-Mans. There's going to be a new Wolverine coming soon. Just so many different characters, and excuse me, and that's just the way it is in all these different roles. Things are going to change because um it's going to be the representation. There's African American superheroes, white, Asian, um, Indian superheroes, just of all races, color, ages, and just brace yourself because these movie studios are not stopping and more is yet to come. I'll bring up one for example. Black Panther, when that was released, some said it was the first comic book film of a representation for a character. But to others, well, wait, there was a movie called Blade by Wesley Snipes. It's like, yes, that's true, but that was one version of a character that's done differently. And this one with Black Panther was basically to just to was how do I say this? It was done in things relatable today. So the storytelling, bringing up history of the past, and just things of and Black Panther is one of the characters that has been around for almost 60 years, and that character offered just so much storytelling and has gotten critically acclaimed for several awards, and so have other comic book films as well. Because, as some might say, that the comic book genre, they're getting tired of it. Well, as I said, these movie companies or movie studios are getting the recognition for the awards. You've gotten actors that have won awards for acting, like Heath Ledger as the Joker, Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker, and currently at this time, Angela Bassett, who has been a part of the current two Black Panther films, playing T'Challa's mother, Queen Ramonda, for Best Supporting Actress. So yeah, um, just I'd say just be patient, but I'm not telling you to love what I love. If you don't love this genre, that's totally fine. There's other things that are coming that you might love, like Deadpool, for example. Deadpool is somebody that doesn't give a hoo ha of anything and calls it as he sees it, and that is something completely opposite of what Wesley Snipes in Blade was and the late Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther was. Comic book movies have done their own iterations and different storytelling. You get comic books done as sci-fi type, political thrillers, um, espionage, just so many different ways because there's been so many different versions and ideas of how all these characters have been brought to life, and they're continuing to change it up as they go, progressing into current things that happen in today's world and things from the past. And the vast majority of comic books that span the 80 years. So I would just love to go into specifics on my favorite comic book films, but I want to leave that for future stuff. What else is there to say? Just, this is a genre that is it brings out I'll say it, it brings out the inner kid in me. If you were to have told my younger self watching those Saturday morning cartoons that you'd be seeing almost this many movies throughout your lifetime, I would have told you you're crazy. And the they're barely halfway in the race, in their own race. They're gonna keep going until they decide, all right, I think we're done. But whenever that is, only they know. Me as the movie spectator and anybody else, we're gonna go to the Cineplex, and out of the 8 movies showing, one or two of them is gonna be a superhero movie. So that's how the superhero comic book genre has just taken over. I have felt like, yes, it is a spectacle. It's a roller coaster ride. I've gotten goosebumps. I've cheered. I've laughed. I'll admit it here. I've cried several times in these movies because the way the storytelling has been, that they've gripped me into it, and I've grown with these characters, and their story has ended in their storytelling. Anybody that, a particular one, for example, is Hugh Jackman's final film as Wolverine, aka Logan. The way that was done and the way that ended, it was an emotional ride, and he's done that character for so many years, and the way it ended on such a positive, satisfying, and emotional note. And who's to say never, he's coming back again, but in Deadpool 3. But not to get into specifics or kind of make this longer than what I would want it to be, is it's a different version, an alternative reality. I'm putting in quotation marks. So that is different from the Logan, but the way that Logan ended was basically how I've felt in all comic books, the experience and what it takes to just get the thrill and everything of just experiencing just the thrill ride of all this stuff. I'm I just love this genre. This particular genre. It's, I would say, definitely one of my top 5 film genres, even though people don't consider it, because then you could separate it, the comic book genre name, and just count these as action, sci-fi, comedy, thriller, fantasy. But for the longest time, as of this date, the comic book genre has taken over Hollywood, and it's a train that's still rolling, and just so much is in the pipeline, and so many things are on the way, and I'm ready for it. And to those who are the casual and first timers, give it a shot. If you don't like it, there's so many other films out there. And by all means, as long as you're everyone is, and I think I've said this if I haven't, but everyone is a fan of something. You enjoy what you love, and nobody should tell you differently. I love this stuff. It is a part of my fandom pop culture zeitgeist, and I'm going to enjoy it till there's no more. So as I think of what else to bring up, I would want to discuss or do reviews on a series of each of these comic book films, maybe in future dates. So let's see where that goes. This is it for today's episode 3 of the AMS movie podcast, discussing all films, past, present, and future. I briefly brought up certain things on the films, and you could call this like a part 2 of talking about a certain topic, and this might be the format or length of discussing this thing. So I'm just, as I said, testing the waters out on this. The first episode was about this length. The second episode was a little bit longer, so it might be working between those time frames. I appreciate everyone that listens, and if you listen at a later date, that's totally fine. Welcome. Thank you for listening. Please like and share. Subscribe to all my subscribers. Thank you for subscribing. If this is your first time listening, welcome. As I said in previous episodes, I have ideas in improving my craft of working these sort of mediums, recording my voice, recording using my face, doing other projects. So let's see where things lead to. I will let you know on what's to come in the future. This was fun. I love just movies in general, and this was fantastic. I just want to thank you again, all, for listening. This was the AMS podcast. I am your host, Adrian Michael Soto. That's it for today. That's all she wrote. I will see you when I see you. Goodbye for now.